always great to be back in Nebraska. As a Nebraska native, it's always fun to come home. And one of the things I've learned about communications is how important it is to get the right message to the right audience at the right time. And we're going to focus on that this morning, but I was reminded how important that is a couple of months ago when we opened a new office in Kansas City. And we got a lovely floral bouquet the very first day and pulled out the card and it said, "With our deepest sympathies." I thought, well, that's kind of strange. You know, I've got some odd friends, but I don't think I know anybody quite that strange. And so I called the florist and I said, you know, I appreciate this, but I'm not sure this was actually supposed to come to us. And he said, well, let me look into it and I'll find out and I'll give you a call back. So he called back a little bit later and he goes, no, he says, I'm terribly sorry. He goes, that isn't for you. We have yours. We'll bring it right over. And I said, not a problem. I said, I run a small business. I understand how things like that could happen. He said, well, actually, it's a little more serious than that. He goes, your bouquet actually went to the funeral home with a card that said, congratulations on your new location. So it really is important to get the right message to the right audience at the right time. And we're going to try to make sure we have that happen this morning. So, social responsibility in food production. What is the ethical choice? You know, we hear a lot of noise today in the news, whether it's in magazines or movies or books, about really what is going on in the food system. And there's a lot of people challenging today's food system, what we're doing, how food is produced, and why we do what we do. At the same time, we know there's some really great producers, folks like Jay Wolfinger, a cattle farmer from Ohio who is now moving to Nebraska, who talks very passionately about his care for his animals. Or farmers like Alan Armstrong, who knows that he takes care of his fields just like anybody would take care of their garden. Or the millions of men and women all around the country who are committed to making sure that we have safe, nutritious, affordable food every day. And so we've got this ongoing potential conflict between those in the media and others who are attacking today's food system and all of those out there that are producing today's food. And so the question becomes then, what is the ethical choice for people, animals, and the planet? And as Russ Parsons said in his Los Angeles Times column, unfortunately, we're not having a conversation about these important issues. Instead, what we have really are two armed camps that are deeply suspicious of one another, kind of shouting back and forth across each other. And the consumers and our customers and others are kind of lost in that mix. And they too are now asking the question, what is the ethical choice? What's the right thing for the food system to be doing? Now, the public has a right to expect those in the food system to act responsibly and do the right thing all the time. We all agree on that. So what we do have now is a great opportunity. Some people think that the new interest that we have in today's food system is a real challenge and it could be a threat. I think it's a great opportunity for us in the food system to do two really important things. First of all, look in the mirror. If we're doing things in food production, processing, retail, or restaurant that we cannot defend, we should stop doing them. It's not that hard. If you can look in the mirror and you can't tell your mother, you can't tell your children about it and be proud about it, we ought to stop doing it. And secondly, if we can be proud about it, we can tell our story and do a much more effective job of telling our story than we've ever done before. Because we know that that story needs to be told. Willow mentioned it earlier, and that's part of why everybody is here today, to help figure out how we can tell that story in a compelling way in the state of Nebraska. And unfortunately, this national discussion has devolved into kind of shouting sound bites. You know, what we want to find is a villain, a victim, and a vindicator, and then simply move on in today's soundbite society. We're willing to give every issue about 7 seconds worth of consideration. We want to fix the blame because it's a lot more easy to fix the blame than to fix the problem. And then we want to simply move on. But what we really need is leadership for a productive discussion of complex issues in today's food system. And I hope that's part of what this group will commit to do before we're done today, is to be leaders in helping to drive that conversation, in helping people engage around the complex issues surrounding today's food system, so that we don't simply have those two armed camps shouting back and forth across each other with very little actually being accomplished. Now, one of the things you can't overstate enough is the importance of getting the right calories to the right place at the right time, because nutrition is the foundation for achievement. In 2008, USDA estimated that 22.5% of all children in the U.S. did not have the financial resources to have enough food or the right food to meet basic needs. The World Health Organization says malnutrition in childhood usually results in worse health and lower educational achievements. And obesity, which sometimes we don't realize is the flip side of food insecurity, is a huge challenge. So we really owe it to ourselves, to our children, and to the next generation to make sure that we have the right calories at the right place at the right time. Because if we don't, unfortunately, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be condemning these children to a cycle of ill health and poverty, and we simply can't afford to do that. That is clearly not the right choice for people, animals, and the planet. So what is the ethical choice? You know, on one hand, you've got the Chinese premier saying that his dream is to make sure that every child in China has enough milk. What a wonderful dream, but what a wonderful challenge, too. On the flip side of that, you've got the First Lady of the United States saying that we need to do something about childhood obesity. Now, both of those are legitimate social challenges. But how do we deal with those, and how do we support a food system that allows us to address both of those challenges simultaneously and not simply pit one against the other? Now, we live in a society where we have a fabulous number of choices for food. We can have lunch at McDonald's or Chipotle, you can buy your food at the farmer's market or at Walmart, but rather than celebrating choice and all the wonderful opportunities that we have, we've tended to kind of pit these one against the other. We've got controversial foods in this aisle and controversy-free food in this aisle. And which one is controversial and which one's controversy-free kind of depends on your perspective. Is it conventionally raised or organic? Is it local or import? Well, we can celebrate all of those choices because we have the luxury to do so in this country. And we can celebrate all of those choices. Now, some people are suggesting that the right thing to do is to simply slow the food system down, to simply roll it back to those happier days of the 1950s. And if we could simply go back to the way things were, life would be much better. But is that the ethical choice? Is that the right thing to do for people, animals, and the planet? Because we recognize that we have to do the right thing for people, animals, and the planet simultaneously. It's not an option to trade those off. So to do that, we really want to take a look at creating a sustainable balance. And what does that mean? We've done a lot of consumer research at the Center for Food Integrity and have got some ideas on exactly what that means and how we can go about creating that sustainable balance to build long-term consumer support. And we use the triangle as a metaphor for that because of the triangle's incredible structural integrity. It creates a great model for us to use. And the foundation of that triangle is about demonstrating and communicating the fact that we are ethically grounded. During Larry's comments, he mentioned the pork producers' ethical commitment in their We Care program. That's simply one illustration of it, to communicate to consumers that we share their values for things like compassion, responsibility, respect, fairness, and truth. The second side of that triangle is about scientific verification. We need the independent, objective, measurable, repeatable data to prove the claims that we're making. This is not about abandoning science, it's about making sure that it plays the right role in our public discussion. And the third part of the triangle is about being economically viable. Because at the end of the day, if those in agriculture are not economically viable, nobody eats. And that is not an acceptable social outcome. But we've struggled at times maintaining a balance on this triangle. And when one side or the other gets out of balance, it becomes unstable and collapses. And what we found in terms of building consumer trust and confidence through our research that's now been peer-reviewed and published is that communicating that perception of shared values is 3 to 5 times more important than demonstrating our scientific competence in building consumer trust. Consumers are 3 to 5 times more interested in knowing that you care than caring what you know. And we confuse those frequently. Because when people ask questions about agriculture today, generally what they're asking is, should you use that technology? Should you use those chemicals? Should you keep that many animals in a single facility? And our response historically has been, well, science says we can. Can and should aren't the same question. Should is a question of values and ethics. Can is a question of competency and scientific verification. So if they're asking a question about our ethics and our commitment to do what's right, and we give them an answer that's based on science, we're non-responsive. And we allow the opportunity then for those detractors to come in and say, we share your values. Trust us. Don't trust those in today's agriculture. They no longer share their values because their systems have changed so much. So you can't trust those people anymore.